Eddie Hearn has now confirmed that Anthony Joshua's next fight is scheduled for March in the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, and he has listed 3 possible opponents: Filip Hrgović, Zhilei Zhang, and Francis Ngannou. Here to discuss this news that has broken the last couple of days with me is my good friend Brian. Brian, what's happening, mate?
I'm fucking glad to be back, brother.
Yeah, it's good to be back. Very good to be back. We're doing well on this boxing channel already. You were the man that was telling me for ages, you've got to start a boxing channel. I don't know why you haven't started a boxing channel. And I wasn't pulling the trigger for ages. Yeah. And I was saying to you the other day, wasn't I, that since doing it, listen, like my main foray in YouTube has always been the Chelsea content, but I can't say wholeheartedly I massively enjoy editing the Chelsea content. I like to talk about Chelsea as you do Newcastle and as any of us do with the team that we love, but the editing thing's just, going through the motions, autopilot. When I edit these boxing videos, especially because of the fact I've got the overlay footage on them as well, I get a buzz off it. I like it. I like doing the boxing
I knew you'd
stuff.
have the passion, mate.
Yeah, it's good. So listen, we've literally just, within the last week or so, watched Anthony Joshua put in, I'm going to say, best performance in the last half a decade, probably.
Easily, mate. He was absolutely outstanding. I mean, I know people are saying, oh, Otto Wallen now wasn't that good. Like, it's always that way, isn't it? Whenever someone destroys someone. But we've seen Wallen in there with Tyson Fury. We know he's a good fighter for that level, and he got dealt with easily. And I loved it. Loved the fight.
I think there's a little bit too much made sometimes of the whole comparison between opponents on how people have got on. I think it's a good measuring stick, but like, let's say, for example, top of my head, Anthony Joshua went, 7 with Dominic Brazil? Wilder done him in a round.
I think a great example in stylistically how different fights can be is the way AJ fought Klitschko versus Fury fighting Klitschko. Like, they were both emphatic wins in ways, but very different.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
I would argue Fury's performance was more dominant over Vladimir Klitschko. However, if I want excitement, it's the AJ one. And ultimately, if I wanted, to have planned out the way I win a fight, it would be the way AJ beat Klitschko.
Oh, yeah.
Rather than the way Fury.
The AJ legacy was made off of that fight. And look, coming into these 3 opponents, it's exciting. I'm actually I'm more excited for AJ's career than I've been in a long, long time personally. Ngannou is a complete wild card. I think, should we talk about him first maybe? We are still yet to really understand how good he is, because there's this speculation of, was Fury just really bad, or is Ngannou really good? What was going on that day? And I've had it on the source of Tom Aspinall, the UFC heavyweight champ, who's very close with the Fury family and good mates with Fury. He trained hard for that fight. Does that mean that the time out of the ring didn't play a part? I'm sure it did. And the fact of the abuse he's put his body through over the years, could that be catching up? Yes, it could. But he tried. And Ngannou is just one hell of a beast of an athlete. And I think, that would be an exciting fight. Just because of the unknown. He's bigger and stronger than AJ and potentially hits harder than AJ. But we know AJ is a better boxer. We know AJ is going to be faster. And that would be a clash of the bodybuilders, the Goliaths, you know what I mean?
Do you know what I feel a little bit, I'm going to sound like an absolute Fury fanboy here, but do you know why I feel a little bit sorry for Tyson Fury with the Ngannou situation is now anyone who fights Ngannou, in my opinion, is going to have such a better chance than Tyson Fury did.
Agreed.
And the reason being, we've now got a back catalogue at least of 10 rounds to be able to understand what we're going on. We now also know what Ngannou's ambition is. And you'll know better than most people because you've sat down and spoke with Francis Ngannou. So you had a real feeling for what sort of man he is. But us as...
I kept saying that, didn't I? I was like, they kill him.
You were telling us. And do you know what? I was naive to it because when you're saying that, I'm sat there and I'm thinking, I respect what you're saying, but this is boxing.
Yeah.
And then ultimately our eyes were opened, wasn't it? And it's like, you know what? This is a guy that can cause serious problems in the heavyweight division. Eddie Hearn, he did something once. He was speaking in an interview, probably with IFL, and he said that whenever a promoter, and he sort of slipped by saying this because he's the worst one for it. He said that whenever a promoter lists out potential opponents, look for the odd name in there, and that's who they're going with. Yeah. So that would tell me that they're going to go with Francis Ngannou here.
I mean, maybe. I think Saudi would love that fight because Ngannou's already said he'd like to fight AJ. It's a mega fight. And given the size and stature and the posters and the razzmatazz, this is what Saudi is all about, right? And look, if we're looking at the advantages that are with Ngannou, in my opinion, or arguably, because there are so many advantages in AJ, from experience to technique to, just so many in his favour, I think that Ngannou has a rock chin. It's going to be fucking hard to hurt him. Like, Fury clearly couldn't hurt him. He was outboxing him at the end, but, there was times where he's like, you could see, I just can't hurt this guy. Power, arguably. I don't know, because the delivery system of AJ is probably going to be better. But I think punch for punch, if they just hit a brick wall, who can hit it harder, I would guess Ngannou, right? But even that's debatable. But the mind... AJ's mind is all of a sudden looking sharper and more confident than we've seen in a long time. But generally, if I'm going off of the last 5 years, who's looked more confident in fight situations? It's absolutely Francis Ngannou.
Yeah.
So those are the little X factors that may play in his favour. But generally, AJ should be a mega favourite in that fight because of the footage and everything. That the surprise factor's just not there anymore.
Who would you make as a bigger favourite out of Tyson Fury going in for a rematch with Francis Ngannou, or AJ going in for a first fight with Francis Ngannou?
I think that stylistically, AJ is a harder fight for Ngannou because Ngannou has to respect more what's coming back at him. The same way Otto Wallen didn't have the level of confidence towards AJ that he had towards Fury, because although Fury was dominating Wallen, he wasn't frightened of the power, whereas he was clearly like, fuck this. I mean, literally just didn't even come out off from the stool, right? So I just think styles make fights, and that's a harder fight for Fury because of just how strong Ngannou is.
The second man we'll speak about before we get into the one that I think myself, maybe yourself, and most people watching this would perceive as the front runner. The second man is Zhilei Zhang. And he's a heavyweight that everyone's very high on at the moment, off the back-to-back wins against Joe Joyce. Obviously, he didn't get the decision against Hrgović, but many felt that he should have got the decision against Hrgović. Quite a lot of people, including myself at the time, didn't think that he actually legitimately dropped Hrgović, although it was given. There was a count given. I thought it was round the back of the head and it sort of brung him down. But I know a lot of people thought he did. So Zhilei Zhang's a man on a hot run of form, isn't he? But
frightening.
AJ has got a win over Zhilei Zhang in the amateurs in the 2012 Olympics. I think that was a semi-final.
He looks like a different beast now, though. To me, he just looks different. Like the way he's fighting, to hit that hard, be that big and strong, and be a southpaw.
Yeah,
it's a horrible style. I think he's the one who I would write off immediately. I don't think any boxer in the top 10 wants anything to do with Zhang.
No.
Because he's just awkward and powerful. A lot of the things that people are scared of other fighters for, he has that, and he's a southpaw. So yeah, and look, Joe Joyce was the unstoppable guy, right? Like what he did to Joseph Parker was unbelievable. Even more impressive now, like, with how good Joseph Parker's looked recently, and yet he ran through Joyce like he was nothing. Like, so I think he's a definite no-no.
That little example you just gave there, though, is an example that I would like everyone in the comments section to remember, because you've just hit the nail on the head there. Like, sometimes, and listen, I love reading everyone's comments, that I really do, but sometimes people come in the comment section and go, well, no, he stopped him, so he got, and it's like, it's really, really deeper than that in terms of how stylistically styles make fights. There's no better saying in boxing because there's no more relevant saying in boxing. A Zhilei Zhang can go and lose to a Hrgović, but a Hrgović could lose to an AJ. Joe Joyce could beat Parker, but Parker could beat Wilder. It's so different. When you spoke about Zhang there, you said about how he's got better, and this is saying you would never really associate with age, right? I watched back the fight of him and Joshua in the Olympics earlier on.
God, you love this shit, don't you?
Yeah. I watched it back earlier on, right? His hand speed's got quicker.
Yeah.
But I don't know. Do you know the only thing I'm basing it off, yeah? Your hand speed's always going to look sharper if you're in there with Joe Joyce in comparison to in there with Anthony Joshua. Yeah. So maybe he's not got quicker. But one thing I do know is I'd very much agree with you in terms of Zhilei Zhang being a heavyweight that most men would really want to avoid.
Because the reward, like the money-wise, like Ngannou is the bigger fight, the bigger name, the one who's more worldwide recognised. Like because Saudi are going to realise we put all of that money into Fury and Ngannou. that is a star we're building. So you're kind of starting from scratch with Zhang, and Ngannou just has this look, and also I think AJ is probably feels more confident against a guy with a lot less experience. So I think
that's a good factor there that I want to ask you. Who would he feel more confident against? Because if you look at it, once, do you know what, mate? Like even from my own experience, you know, like once I've dropped someone, it could be inspiring. Once I've dropped someone, I will never fear that man again. They could be so good, I'll never fear that man again. Maybe that's my delusion and my naivety, but it's just the way I feel. So with Anthony Joshua, if he's beat Zhilei Zhang and he's dropped him with head guards on, by the way, is he going to be more fearful of Zhang or Ngannou?
You make a great point, because apparently the reason why he was so confident against Wallen was because of all of the sparring. He knew, I'm not scared and I'm actually going to wreck this guy. So I think you're spot on. Like mentally, I think there may be more confidence for Zhang, but I don't think Zhang's the same guy anymore. Like, there's something gone on there. Like, I mean, if I didn't know any better, I'd say...
Let's test him.
No, that's what I was thinking. Like, he just looks like a fucking destroyer, doesn't he? Like, he looks like, for me, he's the scariest guy in the heavyweight division right now.
Yeah. I would say with Zhilei Zhang, the only thing here, and it's sort of a nothing point because it's not the same money. We know that the Ngannou fight would get more eyeballs.
Absolutely.
It's a crossover fight, so you're going to get more. You're going to bring both MMA fans into it, boxing fans into it, so it's always going to pay more.
And he wants it as well.
If it paid the same as the Zhilei Zhang fight, Ngannou and Zhang, both the same pay packet, I think AJ chooses Zhang.
Probably,
you know, I think he does, because if you look at the last 5 fights of AJ's, 3 southpaws in there in 5 fights, and the fact
also AJ's not really ever been interested in crossover stuff.
No,
he's quite a traditionalist. I think he really values his credibility and his long-term CV. Like, I think Fury's a lot more. He doesn't care about that. AJ cares about his CV.
I tell you what, AJ does value, in my opinion. He's never said it, but I just got a feeling he would love to get a win over Ngannou because of what happened with Fury and Ngannou.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Like, he's sleeping easy right now, knowing that I got rid of Varlin a lot better and quicker than you did. Well, Fury didn't even get rid of him, you know, went to points. So I think
the narrative would fully change between Fury. Like, right now, the narrative is already being, well, Deontay Wilder looked really bad, and he was one of his hardest opponents, even though I think we know Wilder wasn't the same guy. But the fact that Wallen is a lot more accurate in terms of, we understand styles make fights, but the narrative is that Wallen gave you a hard fight, AJ dispatched of him. If AJ then does the exact same thing to Ngannou, it starts looking bad for Fury, because then his CV, everyone who's, you know, you can, apart from Klitschko, but then even Klitschko, I can say, yeah, you outboxed him, but because you had no other choice. If you'd have gone punch for punch with him, you wouldn't have been able to handle the power, and that's why you avoided that. I actually went punch for punch with him and outmanned him. So it's just more weight to the AJ argument and more reason to, because out of the two of them, Fury's always been the one who's gone and compared everything.
Yeah.
And now AJ is able to actually have that debate if he goes and does Ngannou.
Yeah, I think to be fair, like, I've always been someone that believed that Fury would beat AJ, and I still do believe Fury would beat AJ, but I tell you what, he's got a lot more sort of bargaining power when it comes to the table now of recent form. The last man we'll touch on, and this is the one that I think is the most likely, is obviously Filip Hrgović. This is the one that, because of the rankings with the IBF, I think it is sort of touted as potentially being a vacant world title fight. Now, what will inevitably need to happen is the IBF will need to strip immediately the winner of Fury against Usyk. Now, let's say, for example, right, even man win that fight, the IBF will strip within 10 days, yeah? But I don't think it's like within a day. I think it is from the 10-day mark, and then it's how quick the IBF move. Say they do it 10 days after. The Usyk-Fury fight, I think, is the start of February. I think it's like the 7th or something, maybe.
Yeah, so they'll have about a month.
They got about a month to
turn it around.
And if they don't strip them off this title straight away, and we know that because there's a rematch clause, they are going to strip them of it. It's going to happen. The only way it couldn't happen is, let's say, for example, someone got a really bad cut, really bad injury in the Usyk Fury fight, and then it made sense that, okay, let's say Usyk won, for example, you could go, right, I could defend this while Fury comes back. But most likely it's going to be the fact that they're not going to be stripped for about 10 days. I don't know whether a month's enough time, and I don't know whether if the stripping of the IBF title doesn't happen, Anthony Joshua takes, as a sort of voluntary, off his own back, takes Hrgović.
I think that the Hrgović reward without a belt is nothing.
It's not there, is it?
Because it's just, there's no payoff there in the financial department. Like, Saudi aren't dying to make Hrgović AJ. They're dying to make Ngannou AJ. So I think that this all comes down to whether or not that belt is up for grabs. And I think it also comes down to the Saudi going, here's how much we're going to pay you to take Ngannou. And that's going to be the deciding factor here.
Do you rate Hrgović in the heavyweight landscape at the minute?
Yeah, but like, I'm not excited I'm not desperate to see the fight.
I got a bit of stick in the comments because I said Hrgović gives me a Vitaly Klitschko vibe sometimes, and people are like, you're comparing Hrgović. I'm like, no, I'm saying it gives me a vibe. Like, listen, I've never been in the presence of Vitaly Klitschko, but I have been in the presence of Filip Hrgović. And I tell you what, I've seen him eating pads in the gym. Hrgović can bang. But then, do you know what? To level it out, apart from maybe like Joe Joyce, Tom Little, I've not been in the presence of that many big heavyweights. So maybe it's just a thing of heavyweights can punch a bit. I think he's good. Like, I think Hrgović in the pro ranks, obviously, the only real standout name on his record is obviously Mark Demore. No, I'm joking. The only real standout name on his record, I love having a bit of banter about Mark Demore for some reason. It's only Zhang, and that was a little bit controversial. But in the amateurs, you could argue he boxed at a better level than AJ. He fought Tony Yoka 3 times in the amateurs. Joe Joyce, Joseph Parker, Sergey Kuzman.
I'd say his amateur levels respected.
And I think he's 4 years younger than AJ. So when he was in the amateurs, fighting in these tournaments and that, AJ was considered fairly young. Hrgović was really young. And there's the stories of David Hayes' eye. Do you remember when David Hay had to pull up for the Tyson Fury fight with eye? Hrgović done that. Hrgović has dropped Dubois in the gym by a lot of accounts. So I think he's a dangerous heavyweight. I think
it's all the risk with no reward if there's no belt.
That's it.
Yeah.
Completely.
Yeah.
So out of those 3 fights, who do you think we're leaning towards?
If I had to put money on it, fuck me, it's definitely not Zhang. I think we're both agreeing on that. Hrgović, because it's the one Eddie's been banging on about. But I'm 50-50, because this Ngannou fight has got Hollywood written all over it.
You said it's definitely not Zhang. Who would you like to see it? Fuck the belts, the money, it doesn't matter. You'd like to see Ngannou.
Ngannou, because for me, Ngannou's athleticism is so high. He's such a special specimen of a bloke. I want to see what happens when you're in there with another alpha athlete. Like, I think AJ is arguably the best athlete we've seen in a long time in the heavyweight division, in terms of just, he has everything. But what if someone else has more? Then if you go in there and you walk down AJ and just batter him, for example, like, I'm not saying that will happen, but you just turn the whole heavyweight division on its head, because then all of a sudden Francis Ngannou becomes the number 1 contender to Usyk or Fury.
If he beats AJ, Francis Ngannou's the next thing.
I just want that, because I'm a Francis fan as well as an AJ fan, so I want to see that happen, because it's just game changing for Francis, and we find out really how good he is as well in the process.
I think if I'm thinking with a content hat on, and I'm thinking, right, what can do me numbers producing content around a fight, Ngannou's the one I go for. If I'm purely thinking as a boxing fan, I'd love to see AJ Zhang. That's the one.
I mean, that would be unbelievable. But and also, just because them Saudi trailers for fights are so good, imagine what they do for Ngannou AJ, man. It'll look
the best thing about the Saudis, right, is no matter what, whether we get AJ against Hrgović, AJ against Zhang, all the other guys are going to be on the fucking undercard anyway.
Right.
It's going to be quality, sick, isn't it? So it's going to be good. One last question before we go. Does AJ stay with Ben Davison now?
He has to.
Be an idiot not to, wouldn't he?
Mate, I think Ben Davison is a great mental coach as well as just a solid boxing coach. And there's a reason why so many fighters under Ben seem to win even in the most unlikely of fights. Like, they come back. He's got something where he just taps into them. And I think that it's no... Like, even looking at the way Fury got back up from that punch, I'm not putting that down to Ben alone, but it seems awfully often that Ben is in the corner of a guy who pulls off a win where you're like, how the fuck did he do that?
Lee Wood after going down against Conlon.
In particular.
Jordan Gill was a massive underdog really against Conlon when you look at that going in. Like, he just seems to get result after result for his fighters. Does
and
such
after
a good...
Big John criticised him so much, and now you're seeing Big John criticising Fury's new coaches, and now Ben getting a great performance out of AJ, I think he's got to stick with him.
I'd love someone to say to John Fury, right, okay, you've had a problem with all of them. Barring yourself, who should train Tyson?
I'd love that.
Because who would it be?
Because you know what he would do? He would deflect.
Yeah.
Well, and that would be him trying to be like, well, I don't want to say me, but...
Yeah. Someone like me. Not my cousin.
Exactly.
Right. Brian, thank you very much, mate, for talking to me again today. It's been a good chat, hasn't it? Guys, if you are not already, please make sure you're subscribed to the channel. Hit the like button on this video to help pump it out there. Also, the Pain Game, which I feature regularly on, is linked in the description to this video. So make sure you head over there too. I'll see you all in the next one.